Am I the asshole for calling the police after my mom abandoned my siblings at my doorpost moving out? When I became 20, I left my parents' house because it was intolerable. My name is Ethan, and I am currently 22 years old. They acted as though everything I owned belonged to them as well, frequently gave preference to my younger siblings, and utilized me as unpaid labor. When I moved out, my father, Mark, told me to remain away and not let the door hit me on my way out. I had been working at the same full-time job for almost 4 years, and I rented the tiniest and most economical apartment I could locate. Not even a month had passed when my parents, Mark and Emily, began phoning me to beg me to come back because someone else needed to look after my brothers. I said no, enjoying my newfound independence. Eventually, my father insisted that family should come before personal independence and made me move back and pay them rent. I responded that for once, I was living for me and that my life mattered too. We didn't talk for months after he said, "Let's see how long you last without us." I'm not sure what he was expecting, but I got along just fine without him. My family and I gradually began to patch things up once they came to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to return on my knees. They clearly found it difficult to accept that I now controlled the situation rather than them. Even though the two closest to me were in their late teens, they nevertheless pleaded with me from time to time to watch my youngest siblings. Since they had always thrown the babysitting load on me, my parents' refusal to take on the responsibility seemed hypocritical. They gaslighted me when I brought this up, and then they once more were silent for months. In the end, it was them who returned to seek my assistance. I recently purchased a used gaming console, but I was only able to afford the single game that was included. My mother requested me to keep my two youngest siblings for a bit one Saturday. I was left alone with them in my tiny apartment all day after she essentially pushed them inside and walked off. I contacted my mom and insisted that she come grab the kids, which is why she didn't come back until after 10 o'clock. She didn't like that I interrupted her enjoyment. I warned her that I would no longer watch my siblings all day unless she paid me, and that if she left them outdoors the next time, I would call the police and wouldn't even open the door. I discovered my gaming console was gone the following morning. I thought one of my siblings had taken it, so I contacted my parents. My mom said it could wait as my youngest sibling was playing on it and she didn't have the heart to take it away, even though I stated I would come over right soon to retrieve it. I claimed that it had been stolen without my consent and that I would be picking it up. As fast as I could, I rode my bike to their house. My sibling was crying when I got there since they were missing the charger and the console's battery had died. When I asked for it back, my father took it and told I could have it back if I helped out more with my siblings. I wasn't bluffing when I informed him that I would call the cops if he wanted to play that game. He refused to back down until I began making phone calls. My mother shouted, "Hold on." I swiftly reclaimed the console from my father. She claimed it wasn't worth having the cops come on them, but he called her a traitor and insisted she give it back to him rather than to me. I assured them before I left that I would not think twice about calling the police if this occurred again. They could purchase their own gaming console if they truly wanted one for my siblings. My father, Mark, screamed that I couldn't treat him in such a disrespectful manner. I retorted that I'm an adult, but he's never bothered to treat me with any respect, and I'd had enough. He then yelled at me to turn around and face him as I left. At the moment, they are once again silent. I once received a text from my mom, Emily, pleading with me to continue watching my siblings. Since I wasn't doing it for free anymore, especially after they stole from me and attempted to prevent me from reclaiming my property, I told her that if she really wanted me to babysit, she could pay me, but I would only accept the money up front. I am not their property. They can either adjust or become disoriented since I am an adult with a place of my own and a life of my own. Since that text exchange more than a week ago, none of them have gotten in touch with me, which is okay. They are capable of handling their own mess. Update. It's unbelievable that I completely forgot about this account for almost a year, but I happened to stumble upon my original post when browsing Reddit videos online. I've returned to provide an update after realizing that I completely neglected to do so. Toward the end, there will be some light fighting and police intervention. I thought I'd bring it up even though I'm not sure if that counts as a trigger warning. I recently wrote about my parents' refusal to return my gaming console after one of my siblings stole it, as some of you may be aware. If my parents ever drop my younger siblings off at my door without asking again, a lot of commentators advise contacting the police or CPS. I waited and waited, but it had been around 3 months since my mother had last called, and I wouldn't watch my siblings for free. Then it came at last. When my parents unexpectedly called to ask me to watch the kids, they pretended if the previous console incident had never occurred. I informed them that it had to be a day when I was off from work and that I would not babysit unless they paid me. I no longer had Saturdays off due to a change in my schedule. Since they most frequently asked me to babysit on Saturdays, I really asked my boss for it. Additionally, it was more cost-effective for me to take on an additional shift. As usual, my dad became enraged and told me to man up and lend a hand. As he usually promised to do at my age, I pointed out that he should stop acting as though he controlled me and that, in a technical sense, I was manning up for myself and my own life. However, he dumped a lot of his duties on me and worked on Saturdays so he could forget about them. I was finished with their demands, as far as I was concerned. My mother grabbed the phone away from him after he began screaming into it. Since Sunday is my sole day off, I stated that I could only watch on Sundays and that I would only do so if I was paid $40 and my siblings' lunches, dinners, and snacks were prepared in advance. Since feeding them isn't my responsibility, I wasn't going to waste my money on it. I also made it plain that I would call the police to retrieve anything that was taken from me, such as my console the previous time it was stolen. To make it easy for the authorities to verify that it is mine, I kept the receipt from the time I purchased it and wrote down the serial numbers. My mother became enraged and began to curse like a sailor who had just lost a tooth. Before she discovered I wasn't answering and began insisting I say anything, I let her vent while essentially ignoring the phone. My demands were Sundays only, $40, and prepackaged food, or else they could forget about it, I said to her and my father. On the other end of the line, there was a moment of astonished quiet. My mother then blasted me once again, claiming that my younger siblings, who are 13 and 16 years old, had to take over for me because I was no longer there and they needed a vacation. "Oh, like how you guys gave me breaks?" I asked, laughing. As never before. My mother attempted to claim that because I was the eldest child, things were different. I explained to her that it wasn't different at all. I had lost out on a lot of my youth because they had parentified me. It is hypocritical of them to pretend as though I should take over again now that I am living on my own without them. The two teens living with them are capable of doing anything I used to do. My mother went into victim mode and said that my adolescent siblings were disobedient and unheard. Since I was too busy living my life, I informed her that their issues weren't mine and that they needed to find another daycare provider. My father returned to the phone and began to scream at me once more. He was simply blowing hot air and not actually saying anything, so I just laughed at him. My mother retrieved the phone and begged me again. I restated, $50, prepared food, Sundays only, and I would not think twice about calling the police if I received threats or had any of my belongings stolen. My parents began arguing loudly at one another about what to do, so I told them to figure it out and get back to me later. I hung up after that. For a time, radio silence returned. A few weeks later, I was getting ready for work on a Saturday morning when I heard a loud, quick knock at my door, the kind where you can tell they're using both hands. I've heard my mom knocking for years to let me know she was there, so I'm familiar with the sound. What sounded like someone rushing noisily along the hallway after the banging. Hearing my two youngest siblings arguing and tapping on the door themselves, I listened through the door. My mom had just run off, leaving them outside the door. I had a straightforward strategy for this because of all the warnings I received after my last post. I simply rolled down my window, got out, and left. I can easily climb out of the window by just ripping the screen out of my ground-level apartment. I contacted my neighbor, a kind elderly woman who enjoys having children, who lives a few doors down, and gave her the scoop. She has long been aware of my predicament with my narcissistic parents, and she phoned the police so I could inform them that two children were left in the hallway after their mother beat on a door and fled. Let's just say that my siblings were picked up by the cops. Later, I got a call from my parents, who were very upset. I asked them what they were so upset about, acting as though I had no idea. When I inquired if my mother had simply left my two youngest siblings at my door without anyone answering, she completely acknowledged that she had left them there for me to watch before running away. She explained that I was already out because I had to work on Saturdays. After a few moments of silence, my mother screamed, "How in the world was I meant to know that?" I retorted that she was solely to blame and that she had practically left her children at my door, hoping that I might have been home on a day that I had previously informed her I worked on multiple occasions. By forcing me to watch them, she was attempting to make me miss a shift. She began offering justifications, but I told her that what she had done was unacceptable and immature. I waited for her to stop weeping for a while before asking if she was finished. She reverted to her hostile demeanor and kept shouting. She shouted that she was being charged with child abandonment by the police. She left the children in the hallway, so I replied that wasn't really my fault. Then I said that if I had been at home and she had refused to come back for the kids, I would have called the police on her too because I had already informed them that I now worked on Saturdays and I didn't want to be forced to babysit anymore. She continued to argue pointlessly for the remainder of the call, which didn't really accomplish anything. In the end, my mom just received a fine and a slap on the wrist because she persuaded the police that she genuinely believed I was home. At least that's what my next sibling claimed when he contacted me. The fact that she had to pay a fine should make her reconsider leaving children at my door and fleeing again, but I'm not sure how much it was. Since my dad was at work and said he didn't know she was going to leave my brothers at my door, he wasn't charged. He was reportedly furious with my mother for doing it. I couldn't stop laughing at this pot and kettle scenario. However, I suppose I must give my old guy credit because he had never done what my mother did. In any case, my mom now has a police record, which is, in my opinion, a first strike in the eyes of the law. Thanksgiving was the turning point after that. I was completely anticipating my parents' invitation to be a trap of some sort. It was too. My dad pretended to be in control while he sat at the table smoking a cigarette during supper. He said, enough was enough, and that he was ending this farce after having my mom sit me down. He informed me that they had no more time for themselves and that the fine my mom had to pay had a significant negative financial impact, so I needed to return home, help with the bills and mortgage, and help raise my siblings. Regardless of how much he tried to command me, I just answered no, and I continued to do so. Even though he's a big man, he became so enraged that he actually attacked me. Fortunately, I'm not either, having acquired some amateur fighting techniques and been going to the gym for months. When he came at me, I kicked him quickly in the balls because I was wearing steel-toed boots too, and then I struck him hard enough in the face that he fell to the ground in an instant. He landed with a loud thud and clutched his groin, vomiting from the pain. I then informed my parents that I could easily prove he attacked me first because I had my phone filming in my pocket the entire time. I complied with my dad's order to leave his house and never return, but not before stealing a turkey leg from the plate and riding home to eat it. The only people who have phoned or contacted me since are my siblings. I marched out like a boss, they claimed, and now dad's poor balls are the subject of constant jokes in the house. I was invited to return for other holidays after spending Christmas with a friend's family. Update: my parents blame me for losing the baby because my mom was pregnant. I now see why my parents attempted to have me return home for Thanksgiving. I have just learned that my mom was expecting her 6th kid. First of all, shortly after my last post, one of my siblings discovered my Reddit account and showed it to our parents. In response, my parents stormed into my apartment and yelled at me, accusing me of being a horrible parent and of arranging for my mom to be detained. Yes, they are. Standing in my doorway, I yelled at them for all they had done, including putting my siblings at my door on a day when they knew I was at work. In any case, that is poor parenting. I would have called the police on mom when she left the kids at my door, so it didn't really matter that I set them up, it wouldn't have mattered in the end. I replied that behavior alone confirms my belief that they are bad parents, and my dad appeared to be about to raise a fist in my direction. Then he said that if he tried to hit me, it would end the same way it happened the last time, and I didn't think my boots, yes, I was wearing them, could hit his balls again. When he remembered what I had done to him the last time, Dad appeared to wince and tense his legs together. In the end, he dragged my mother out by the hand and left. Before he left the corridor, he shouted back that since I was entirely to blame, he expected me to reimburse them for the fine they had to pay for child abandonment. I informed them that I owed them nothing and told them to fuck off. They remained silent in response. I received some extremely horrible news not long ago. After a terrible incident at home, where she tripped on damp porch stairs and fell face down in gravel, my mom, who was about 7 months pregnant, lost the baby. To be honest, when I saw her before that, I had no idea she had been pregnant. She's always been awkward and a little heavier than average, not fat, but just enough that it's hard to tell if she's pregnant or not. She definitely wanted someone to blame because this was her first miscarriage, which is heartbreaking. I destroyed the family by not assisting them and by costing them a lot of money, therefore in her opinion, someone had to be me. She was on crutches when she and Dad returned to my place to accuse me of being the cause. I didn't come home to help when they needed me, thus she lost the baby. I called them out on their attempts to blame me for something that wasn't my fault and their need for free childcare, which led to a quite heated debate. In any case, I assured them, it's not my fault that they became pregnant again when Mom was 45. Dad was too frugal to ever replace or repair the decaying old porch, so blame it on it. When I said that, my father put his hands on me once more and gave me a stinging right hook. I ultimately kicked his ass again after that. I've continued to train out at the gym, and I've gotten stronger since defeating him during Thanksgiving last year. There was no chance for him. My mother's yelling forced me to stop when I lost my temper and broke his nose and knocked out both of his front teeth. My father needed to be transferred to the hospital, so the police called and I was placed in handcuffs. Fortunately, My apartment complex's halls are equipped with CCTV, and I also had my phone camera recording behind me in my unit. When my parents knocked, I began to record. The video clearly demonstrated that I defended myself after my father hit me first. Since it was deemed self-defense, I'm basically safe, but now my parents want to sue me for my dad's medical fees and the fine they had to pay earlier. I defeated Dad, so he won't be able to go to work for a while. He has 2 lost teeth, a black eye, a broken nose, a neck brace, and who knows what else. He is also really upset that he had to shave off his beard. I suppose this makes him even more dead to me because I already thought he was pretty well dead before this. He no longer has the little authority he once believed he had as my father. Because of all the hard work I've put in over the past few months, I'm physically stronger than him and will soon be starting a new job that pays significantly more. I might be able to get a much better place to live after a few years of saving. When my oldest sibling became 19, they called to tell me that I was their hero for beating the living daylights out of Dad and that they were going to leave, just like me. However, my parents found out about my Reddit posts once my next sibling discovered them after hearing about them on YouTube. My mother apparently forced them to show her my post after overhearing them discussing it. They stated she broke items because she was angry. My siblings have expressed regret for letting Mom and Dad know, and they claim that if they had realized Mom was listening, they would never have brought it up. Additionally, both have expressed their happiness that there won't be another child. They already have to handle a lot of my parents' babysitting, which they detest. They acknowledge that they first blamed me for leaving, but they now understand that you have the right to choose your own path as an adult. Whether my parents will actually attempt to sue me is still up in the air, but I believe I can state that if they do, it will be a loss for them. My friend's uncle is a lawyer, and he promised to defend me in the event that my parents filed a lawsuit. He adds that since it was self-defense, they don't have much of a case. To my folks, who will most likely see this, leave me alone, please. That's all I have to say. My siblings and I are not your property, and I will assist them in leaving your home when they are old enough to do so at the age of 19. Both of you have always been self-centered egotists. It's not my fault that Mom lost the baby, and it's not my fault that you struggled so much without me around to watch your kids for free. Think of that smashed nose and missing teeth as a good excuse to avoid me in the future. Remember that because of you two, I have only told you a small portion of the nonsense that occurred in my life. I could share story after story about the events in my early years if I so desired. However, I wouldn't be satisfied with it. So please, don't bother me. P.S. Yes, my mom had to give birth to a stillborn baby at the hospital, but I wasn't going to bring it up earlier. According to my siblings, my parents had a secret funeral among themselves, and Mom brought home a little urn that she keeps in the bedroom. After leaving with the urn for a few hours, they returned intoxicated. My mom spent over 6 days in the hospital due to whatever injuries she sustained in the fall. I've contacted my siblings for further information. Someone asked if she had been shoved. I'm now doubting that myself. The only excuse I could come up with was that Mom was in a hurry to be somewhere when she slipped and fell off the porch. I've heard of folks suffering more severe injuries in more foolish ways. When I researched the cremation procedure, I found that it would take 8 to 12 days to obtain the ashes. This indicates that the urn they brought home was empty. I'm completely perplexed. However, my parents' funeral took place a few days after Mom left the hospital. Until the day of their small funeral, my parents kept that urn in the bedroom. They may have collected the ashes by then, I suppose. Perhaps it explains why they returned home intoxicated, but this situation is so strange and twisted that I'm having a hard time thinking about it anymore. Revise posting again so soon feels strange. I mentioned in my last post that my mom had a recent miscarriage following a serious fall. I had a bad feeling about the information I was given. I concluded that going directly to the source was the only way to obtain the truth after reading all of the comments I had gotten about it. I visited my parents on Sunday. They both appeared to be in terrible shape and were at home, sleeping. In addition to using crutches to walk more than a few steps, my mom appeared to be very exhausted. I saw that she had numerous bruises and bandages on her face from the fall a few steps from the door. My father, to find out how he appeared, read my previous post's depiction of him following the thrashing I inflicted. When I arrived, my parents were blown away. I insisted on knowing if there was ever a baby or if this was all a pathetic attempt to coerce me into returning home. After what happened, my dad claimed I had a lot of guts to show there and let myself in. However, my mother sobbed as she revealed that she had actually been pregnant. She stumbled into the bedroom and picked up a little urn that seemed really elaborate. It was filled with ashes. They didn't smell like anything, even when I looked to see if they resembled cigarette or barbecue ashes. I didn't really smell anything at all. Even though I had looked online and saw that it takes at least 8 to 12 days to get the ashes returned, I questioned why they brought the urn home and said that the ashes were already inside. Mom had spent no more than 6 days in the hospital. According to my mom, they purchased the urn online with the hope of retrieving the baby's ashes upon visiting the crematorium. They simply waited till they could retrieve the ashes a few days later and then went out to get drunk because they were so distraught that they couldn't bring the kid home yet. Mom said she begged the crematorium to do things a little faster. Her eyes were filled with real tears. Although I've witnessed her crocodile tears numerous times, this one didn't appear to be that. I learned more about my mother's fall and what transpired. She was late for her appointment with her physician, an OB/GYN, or whatever they are called. Mom clarified that she was attempting to get out to her appointment after oversleeping during her nap. Then, as she attempted to down the stairs, she slipped on a toy. About 3 years ago, the porch's guardrails deteriorated and snapped off, and Dad never restored or repaired them. Mom had nothing to cling to then. She fell straight off the porch, hitting the ground with her face and belly first. She even showed me the marks from her landing all over her stomach. She informed me that the child would have been a male. There would have been one more brother in addition to my 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Then Mom told me that because of her age and past injuries, a doctor advised her not to try to conceive again since her body might not be able to take it. It wasn't any easier to hear in person, but I kind of assumed that was the case after some individuals messaged me about it. At last, I posed the crucial query: why did she hold me responsible? Mom began to add something along the lines of the day they showed up at my apartment was just really, really bad. But Dad interrupted her. It's all my fault, he screamed. I would have been there to help if I had followed his advice and returned home for Thanksgiving, and now I'm responsible for the death of a baby. I screamed back at him, telling him that he was to blame since Mom might not have fallen if he had actually bothered to fix the fucking porch. Furthermore, not that it would have made a difference, he didn't even bother to inform me that Mom was expecting back at Thanksgiving. Instead of taking sides, my mother simply left the room in tears as we kept ranting at one another. My dad was so red that he looked like a lit match. He shouted for me to leave his house and waved his ancient hunting knife at me. He told me I was no longer his son as I was leaving. He was always a bad father, so I informed him that I hadn't seen him as a father in years. I told him before I left that I would be requesting a restraining order and that he would have to deal with the authorities the next time he attempted to harm my siblings in the same way that he had done me. He will lose more than a few teeth, and if he attempts the same nonsense with my siblings as he did with me, I won't think twice about calling the police or CPS. He swore at me from the front door, saying things like, "You son of a..." I retorted that that was a slight to Mom, and he became enraged once more. After that, I saluted him with one finger and rode off on my mountain bike. So, I suppose that's the best response I can give someone. I'm not sure what the truth is if this isn't it. Does it matter now though? As soon as possible, I'm going to file for a restraining order, and once I start earning money from my new work, I'll be seeking to transfer apartments. After this, I'm not sure whether I'll feel like updating again. Unless my parents do something horrible to my siblings, I think I might be done here since I'm just going to be depressed thinking about all of this. I hope I've made my message clear to them. Even though I've already given Dad 2 beatings, he still held that knife with a hint of fear. He thought he was staring at a monster. Perhaps he views me as a monster, but if that means he never harms my siblings, then that's okay. Sir, he will be the monster. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.